Open your ears, I promise this will take a second. Put you on game, my brother, teach you valuable lesson. Respect yourself, we happy, no need to reminisce. No need to worry, you chillin' with men with confidence. Speak your mind, say what's up with your life. We can teach you wrong for right and take the darkness out your life. So what's good? What's good? It ain't nothing but a small thing. Have a seat, you can talk to us about anything. Money's, cars, sports, or maybe your business. Positive goals in your life support better living. A pep talk to the ones who in the darkest hour. Remember, sunlight comes after a rain shower. There's nothing wrong with the man who take notes. Don't take this as a joke. These words are well spoken. Teammates, cause we playing to win. I have a seat at this table with some men with confidence.
And welcome to Men in Confidence Sharing, where we, the men of a certain age, share our thoughts, ideas, and opinions in confidence. And today we're joined by two members of the crew. We have Terrence and we have Rhino. So we're going to go one by one and say hello to the fellas. Hello, Rhino.
It's good.
And hello, Terrence.
Greetings and salutations, people.
Yes, we are back. Back again. Guess who's back? Tell a friend. But anyway. This time we're going to have a discussion about Black history. What is Black history? Why is it important? How much of it is being discussed? How much of it's being taught? There's a lot of things we're going to cover. So I'm going to start with the fellas and ask them the first question. What do you think of when you hear the words Black history? And if you can, give your own definition of what you think Black history is. So toss that out to the fellas. Let's see what they get.
Okay, so for me, when I hear the words Black history, I think, and I'm trying to say this the way that I formulated it in my head a little earlier when looking at what we were talking about tonight. Black history is the story of a lot of things within our society and culture that have been created, the origins of those things, and these things have been taken for granted, overlooked, and forgotten about in some instances. Black history to me means we're talking about people who look like me, who have overcome extraordinary odds and insurmountable challenges to do the unthinkable, to make what was impossible possible.
Okay. Appreciate it, Terrence. How about you, Ronald?
To be quite honest, I didn't give it a whole lot of thought because I thought it was quite clear and present. Black history is just basically remembering us. I remember being a kid taught and being taught those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. And Black history was remembering who we are and where we came from. I can't word it any other way. It's the history of us, the history of Black people, specifically in America, but I really think it extends past America because I don't believe there is a continent that Black people aren't on. I was reading about the indigenous people of Australia and the Blacks that lived there before England decided that was a good place to drop off their prisoners. So we're quite global, but if you weren't taught that, then you won't know that. And it's good for us to know who we are and where we came from.
Okay, appreciate that. Okay, so what do I think of when I hear Black history? What is my definition of Black history? I think it's like starting at the point of a current black person or a young black person, whether in America or pretty much any other country, and just hitting the rewind button, right? Like going backwards in how did you get to where you are right now? How many people of influence have been involved in you getting to where you are right now? Whether you are aware of them, whether you're not, whether they are American or not, even if they've gone back thousands of years. Like one of the things that I think that happens a lot in America is when we talk about Black history, we talk about certain people. We'll talk about Martin, we'll talk about Malcolm, we'll talk about the Underground Railroad, we'll talk about slavery and Booker T. Washington, and that's about it, And it's like, there were black people before the 1600s, right? Like there were black people going back, like Africa, Egypt. I mean, there's so much untapped knowledge that I feel like is not being discussed. But as a whole, I think Black history is the history of black people, basically. What is our total history, like from beginning to now?
I think it's interesting that you went through that list of names that are commonly thrown around during Black History Month. The Malcolms, the Martins, the Frederick Douglasses, the Harriet Tubmans. And I feel like, and I don't know if you guys feel the same way or not, but to me, it seems like the older I get, the shorter that list gets.
I agree.
Exactly, I agree as well. I definitely remember. I'll be honest here. I've actually tried to forget Black History Month in times past, because a lot of times it seemed to me to be the same old rigmarole, and I don't want to see these images of black people being hosed down in the street for protesting for their beliefs, peacefully protesting at that, and it just bothered me. It made me feel bad, and it kind of made me very, very distrusting of the white people that I've come to appreciate and love in my life. But at the same time, I understand it. But in recent times, it seems like Black History Month is taking on a different perspective, and they're coming from a different angle in the information that's being presented. For instance, I'm learning that Black people are responsible for having invented more things than I previously knew that Black people invented. And it always bothers me how much I don't know about Black history, because so much of Black history hasn't been taught. I remember as a kid having some white kid tell me, if white people left the planet, then Black people wouldn't be able to survive. And as it turns out, if white people left the planet, Black people would advance so far ahead and beyond, because we've invented so much. And the narrative, it made me wonder about last year's narrative and the narrative the year before that. Why was this information being hidden from me? But that's just what I think.
That's interesting. That someone said, if all white people left the planet, Black people wouldn't be able to survive.
Oh, dude, turns out we would do great. we would kill it. We would set this planet up, and we would be just fine. So if all the white supremacists in the world decided to leave the planet, have fun.
Guess what? we'd have air conditioning and stoplights and dry cleaning and so many other things that we created. We'd have peanut butter sandwiches.
Maybe we can get back to Nikola Tesla's
101 things
idea and
made with a
provide
peanut.
power for every home, regardless of pay rate. Stop charging people for power.
We'd still have open heart surgery, and so many things.
Right?
We still have vaccinations.
Like, come on, man.
But so much of our history has been downplayed, and if not overall, written out of the picture. And some little things, like who's the first man to reach the Arctic?
Matthew Henson.
He's black, right?
Yeah.
Well, why wasn't that told before? Because somebody in the past wanted to make it seem like all of the accomplishments were done by white people. And that's not the case.
I think from my experience, I feel like we all grew up during the same general era and were taught certain things in school. But fast forward, I don't know, 10, 15 years, a lot of what we learned isn't being taught, and to kind of be somewhat on the level here, there are certain things that's not being taught anymore. Like, first thing came to mind, as I said it, cursive handwriting. It's not really being taught anymore because, I think about elementary school kids, for example. When are they writing like a paper on paper? They're typing and printing and writing stuff out like that. It's probably not necessarily a vital skill, but history, on the other hand, like you said in the beginning, Rhino, is one of the things where if you don't know it, you're doomed to repeat it. So it should be taught, all of it.
Right.
Okay, so let me jump in real quick because it sounds like the conversation is flowing a little way. I want to throw the second question in the midst of this and ask, why is the knowledge of Black history important? Like, why is it important to know your history, to know what, where we come from or where a person of Black descendants comes from?
I think that's kind of what we were just addressing a little bit. It's important to know because fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. When I say that fooling somebody is easy to do if they don't know anything about themselves, where they come from, or what they represent, or what they could represent. Not teaching history is a way of fooling that individual that, well, this fixed point that I say is where you started. You didn't exist. You weren't anything other than this, starting from this point. Let's ignore thousands of years of your ancestors being great. We're going to start at this point. And this is the best that you could have been. And you struggled, persevered, fought, and got a modicum of come up in respect, and now you've arrived to this point, and now the door is open for you to be anything. That door has always been open, but you wouldn't know that if you don't know your history.
Right. I find it a boost of my self-esteem knowing that I came from great people. And I'm not by any means saying that people that, and I'm not saying that like white people are less than us. I'm not saying that anybody else that's not Black is less than us. But it's a boost to my self-esteem to know that I came from people who did great things. And I'm not talking about war and conquering and dominating other people. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who made serious advancements in medicine and technology. great people who had great ideas and did great things. It makes me feel better knowing that because of these people, I'm here, as opposed to the narrative that was written before to gaslight generation after generation after generation that you came from a bunch of savages that gave the world vaccines, savages that gave the world so much of the things that they enjoy today, and by enjoy I mean advancements that's necessary for life today. Why would you hide that from me? Are you afraid that I'm gonna suddenly rise up and destroy you?
Yes, that is the answer. That is the answer. that is the ongoing fear, is that it's the historical fear. It's the fear that, you know what, this group of people has been wronged for this amount of time, and that come up as his due.
Want revenge.
Is right. Right. Like clearly we want to get back at him. But I think one of the things that gets me is when you hear Black history, it's like you hear the same story. Some bad people went to Africa and grabbed these Africans and brought them over here and put them in slavery. We good people released them and freed them. Those two different sets of people, by the way.
Right.
We good people freed them. So they were brought over here, they were slaves. Then they were freed. And then Martin Luther King helped them get rights to vote and sat down and was nonviolent. Now we have Barack Obama. And it's
much progress
it's like 4 steps. It's like slavery, freedom, Dr. King, Obama. And that's the full story. That's the end. Exactly. Barack Obama was president. They won. The end.
I'm really trying to make a conscious effort to have this conversation without necessarily mentioning other people. I don't want to point fingers at anybody else specifically, because that opens up a whole nother can of worms. And the conversation in my eyes is about Black history. So if it's about Black history, I'm going to talk about Black history and how that impacts Black history. And I'm been tinkering around with this phrase in my head, kind of putting together my thoughts on the topic. And it's like, for a while over the course of 2020, 2021, the phrase Black lives can't matter until all lives matter, right? Black history is a part of all history, so it matters, period. We gotta stop this I don't want to say divisiveness, but we got to stop this idea that Black history is somehow separate from history. No, Black history, if we want to talk about Dr. King and 20 years from now, Barack Obama, that's a part of American history.
Right.
Own it. We want to talk about slavery and those people who went to Africa and brought people here. That's a part of American history.
Right.
You don't like it, is not the most nice thing to have happened in history, but history is not always going to be this fairy tale of good times and people bonding together over turkey dinners and being welcomed into this new country at Ellis Island, just waved on in like, hey, how's it going? Come on, welcome.
For the record, the turkey dinners didn't work out too well for the Native Americans.
Well, I threw that in there just kind of in just as it's in history. You got good things that happen, you got bad things that happen. Don't try and gloss over stuff because it makes you look less than favorable. I mean, if we got to point out the fact that there were black people who sold other slaves into slavery, then we need to talk about the entirety of this thing, not just pockets of it.
Right. People use stuff like that to gaslight and to lessen the impact of their fear. I remember being told that so many. Well, black people were enslaving other black people. I'm like, dude, don't even. that doesn't excuse all the other things that were done.
At its core, indentured servitude was what? Basically, white people enslaving other. I mean, and I said I wasn't going to talk about, but
well, right. they got out though. They got out of it. It was more like a rent-a-center for slaves.
I know it wasn't exactly the same,
but there was a pathway out. But they were treated. I don't want to say somewhat the same, but it was the same and different. But
there was definitely a difference. It wasn't necessarily as arduous as what's the word?
I was taught that indentured servitude was basically just a contract. You help me get to where I'm going, I'll help you out, and I'll give you 7 years of my life, for instance, to help you out. And then at the end of the 7 years, our contract is up, I go my way. You're welcome.
I think and I don't want to stand on this point because I want to pivot off to something else. Here's one of the things I feel like is one of the biggest difference between indentured servitude and slavery. It doesn't even have to do with when it ends or what the terms were. I feel like in indentured servitude, at the end of the day, they still considered you a man, right? They still considered you a human being.
Yeah.
Whereas a slave, they didn't really look at you as a human being, right? They looked at you as more like cattle or a workhorse. You were equipment, you were property, and you weren't a person. But anyway, that's not quite what I wanted to get into.
Right.
I was thinking more of the Black history versus American, or Black history versus history as a whole. Like, I look at the celebration of Black history similar to what's the word I'm looking for? Oh my goodness, I can't even think of it now. Kind of like, and help me with this term, like with employment, when you have to hire a certain amount of Black people. I can't remember what the name.
Equal opportunity?
Not equal opportunity. Oh my goodness, I can't think of it. Like when you have to employ a certain percentage of Black people. Affirmative action. That's what I'm thinking. Affirmative action. Okay. So I look at Black history as kind of affirmative action for history, in that it exists because history in and of itself was purposely leaving stuff out, right? There wouldn't be a need for Black history if regular history was teaching everything, or even teaching it at a respectable percentage, right? There's a lot of history out there. And if black people make up, let's say this is, if black people make up like 13, 15, whatever percent of the population, then the amount of history you should teach should be at least 13 or 15% us, right? But it's normally not that. It's normally not even close. And it's like we have to take out our own little slice just to make sure that it's known that we are in history also. And I would rather it not be that way, but until history puts us in it, there's a need for black history.
Right. It's definitely a conversation that needs to be had. We can't go on protecting everybody's feelings.
Oh boy.
What more can I say? I mean, it's that's not reason to, start a fight. I'm not trying to say start a fight, but look, we can't keep ignoring this thing. We've got to talk about it. Let's talk about it. Stop trying to hide it. Stop trying to pretend that this, that, and the other didn't happen. It happened. Let's talk about it. And stop trying to treat it like some separate animal. I know this is repetitive, but it's history is history. And I understand the concept of histories written by the victors. Well, the victors needs to start putting in accurate, clear information.
I'd also like to add that I feel like our history gets balled up into slavery and the fight for equal rights. And I feel like what has happened before slavery, like our African heritage, gets completely left out. Like, slavery till now is only a small percentage of our history. Like, there are thousands of years of history in Africa, in Egypt. Like Egypt's not Africa. I don't know why I'm saying that. But anyway, in Africa, in the continent of Africa, not the country of Africa, but in the continent of Africa, that's being left out.
Every continent in Africa?
I say in the continent of Africa, not the country of Africa. Because sometimes it feels like when people address Africa, they treat it like a country.
Right. Yeah, they treat it like one country. There's several countries within.
Like we're going to go to Africa and Egypt and Madagascar. Like, you realize that's all the continent of Africa.
One place.
That's one place.
I know, but I get what you're saying about history and how it just seems to kind of start almost as if, I don't know, there weren't any black people on the planet ever until a need for slaves arose. And it was like, well, where are we going to find these slaves? Africa. Let's go there.
I hear they grow them there.
Just grab up these people and then bring them to the United States and ta-da. What? No, that's not how that works at all. And to me, I feel like that's doing a disservice to everybody. I said I wasn't going to bring other people into the conversation, but it is what it is. I feel like if you don't want to carry this burden of guilt or not wanting to be lumped into the same group of people, or, well, that happened so long ago, or, not everybody, falls, whatever one of those tropes you want to hang on to, then how about you do your part in acknowledging there's a whole history prior to this. There's a whole history prior to slavery. You really want to stand out and kind of get over that hard feeling of feeling like, you know, you don't want to be associated with people who did bad stuff. Learn something about Black history prior to slavery. Okay.
I've never understood why a person in 2022, or in this year, why would you have a problem admitting the wrongs of something you didn't even do, right? Like, it's your forefathers and your ancestors. Like, if my great-great-grandpappy treated some people wrong, and they're like, hey, we found out your great-great-grandpappy treated these people wrong. Oh, I'm sorry that happened to them back then. That really did happen. Instead of trying to push dirt over top of it, like, nah, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't understand why not admit it if it wasn't really you.
Right. Well, I mean, I think the problem here is if we really think about this thing, sometimes things didn't happen as long ago as they really try to make it seem. I mean, I was having this conversation probably about 2 weeks ago with someone. If we really stop and think about this thing as men of a particular age, essentially, we may be the first people in our families who were born with full civil rights.
Yes.
I mean, I know my mom was born before 1965.
Right.
I'm pretty sure your parents were born before 1960.
Mom was born in 55.
So at the very least, they grew up and probably remember seeing whites only this, blacks only that. And this is my mom we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah. I have a Negro high school yearbook in my bookcase right now.
I remember in California,
with teachers we know.
I remember getting a haircut in California, and this lady, she was going off. She was just one of those, one of those persons who she just goes off. And this particular day she was going off, she was talking about how she remembers walking down the street and having to step off the sidewalk because a white person was coming. And I was like, that really kind of blew me away. I was like, what? I'm not doing that. He's going, what? You step off. Okay, well, here, look, I'm gonna fix the situation. When you pick the guy up and you throw him off the sidewalk, I'm not doing that. What do you think this is? But she remembers living, and this was a requirement. This was expected of her. To step off to the side and let the white guy pass.
Okay, so Terrence...
Try that today, is going to be a fight.
Terrence brought up a very good point where he mentioned about how we very well could be the first generation to grow up with full rights. Like, there was not a point in time where we didn't have full legal, or I'll even say social rights. I want to keep that in mind and save that for the next episode, because we're gonna jump off on that. But I think this is a pretty good spot to close for right now, and then we're gonna pick up right off of that on the next episode. But before we go, anybody want to add anything else?
I think I can continue on next time.
You're going to get the opportunity, I promise you. If there's anything else you want to add, you will get the opportunity.
Well, with regards to the two questions we talked about tonight, and just kind of where we're at this juncture of the conversation, I really feel like, and maybe I'm leading a little bit in saying this, you know, I didn't say Black history was, when I think about it, you know, something that, like Rhino said, instills me with pride and self-esteem and makes me feel, you know, good about where I come from. And I didn't mention that just because for a while I've bought into the narrative of, you know, all of the images that they show you during the civil rights movement, or all of the horrificness of slavery. And when you think like that, it's really easy to fall into that sense of, maybe it really wasn't that great, so I don't want to talk about it. I just want to focus on the good stuff and move forward and just kind of leave that thing behind you. But the truth of the matter is, knowing that, knowing where you came from, should provide motivation, inspiration, energy, fuel to do your level best to make up, or not make right, but do things on behalf of those who couldn't because of the things they endured. So that's just one last little tidbit with regards to what we've been talking about so far. I want to throw out there, and I'm good.
I am with that. Okay, so if nothing additional, I'm going to throw it right back to you for the closing.
Happens often. Comes back to me for the close. But, you know, at this point, I'm good with it. So, as always, thank y'all for listening. Like, share, and subscribe. God bless you. Good night. Deuce.
Peace out, everybody.
Peace.